I really like this chapter for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because it's fun. Like, it feels like a really whimsy chapter, especially with its ending and Denji's new armor and his form. It's cool. It's very unexpected. It's right up Fujimoto's alley, but it's not something that he does often, I would say. Thinking back throughout the story, it's rare that he elevates or emphasizes big power-up moments. A lot of the times he will just drop it in, like nothing happened, and then continue moving the story past it. Even though it's a big moment, a big transformation, a big thing happening, he never tends to dwell on it. For once, it feels like this isn't that. There's a build-up, there's a connection, there's a understanding in your mind that you have to kind of process this stuff going on, and then boom, you get hit with a beautiful character design, brand new Denji. Everyone is dubbing as Denji Man, which I think is very cute. I love the design for this form. It's like a super simplified version of full armor Pochita. It's not too over the top or crazy. It just adds more armor pieces to the original thing while changing a lot of characteristics from the original. So the arms are broken, they're busted, but we're going back to 2 individual arms. His forearms are held together by the Pochita wire or ripcord, whatever you want to call it. And then his face design has changed. He actually has eye holes now. He has horns. He has a smaller handle. He still has the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck motif, which I think is very fitting. It's just nice to see it build upon the original version with, I would say, more of Denji's characteristics. To me, I feel like there's more here though. I wouldn't be surprised if this armor that's currently on top does actually start to form into a full body armor on top of what we already have. It seems like it's regenerating and trying to remorph itself back together because he is heavily injured and coming out of an injury that he just took. He was a literal torso only seconds ago. So if that is the case, I'm wondering what the full version of this form is perhaps going to look like. The biggest part of this transformation though that I find very compelling is the joining or merging of Pochita and Denji's mind. This is something that we have not seen before to this extent, level, extremity, whatever. And I think it's very important not only for where it's placed within the story contextually, feels like a very climatic moment, a very last stand type of thing, but it's also massive for Denji's development mentally and emotionally. We only know bits and pieces on how Pochita technically operates. We can piece it together ourselves and build the picture with whatever emphasis is given, and it works pretty well. But we don't have the quote-unquote technicalities, which I think is okay. A way that you can view full armor Pochita or the hero of hell is kind of like a cage, and when he goes into that form, it means that Denji is regressing back to a primal instinct, and it usually has something to do with rage or anger or an emotion that is so heightened to an extent where Pochita has to take control. Now, this isn't something that Denji is in control of actively. His mind is scrambled within this form, he goes back into these primal urges, and Pochita is the one taking the reins. For the entirety of the story, this has made the most sense because logically, Pochita is the hero of hell, quote-unquote Chainsaw Man, and this is where the massive erasure ability comes out. But I also bring up some problems. Pochita is not Denji, but Pochita does his best to protect Denji. There is things, however, that Pochita will do that are in Denji's favor without them technically communicating. This situation, for example, where death has been erased, is a plan conspired by Denji and Asa. Pochita has responded to that idea and has done it accordingly. This makes sense when you think about them on like a mental level. They share the same body, brain, infrastructure, so it makes sense that Pochita and Denji can kind of telepathically communicate because they are each other. They are 2 separate beings, but they're combined so inherently they operate off each other that it just makes sense. For the first time, we are seeing Denji take control of this form, and this is very, very important. His mind does not seem scrambled. He seems well and truly aware of himself, and this means that he has all of the power of Pochita at his disposal with himself in control. So of course, the form visually represents a lot of Denji's inspiration. Funny enough, what could be what he considers the hero. For me, the armor was giving Kamen Rider. A lot of people pointed out Super Sentai and the Rangers, etc., and I think that's a great shout. Denji's idealistic version of what is technically a hero and what he would want that to be as a visual representation is now conforming to the armor that he's wearing around his body. That, I find is really cool. Small details as well, like the horns, something that he didn't have to add, that makes me believe it's his continued motif to power, like when the horns spawned onto the chainsaw itself, or even just the eye holes, for example, fully open and bright. Pochita never has eyes to see from. Denji's normal Chainsaw Man form has like caged eyes. So if you want to take those steps further, he's gone from being caged to completely isolated and away from combat in Pochita's form to now being fully and completely in control, the epitome of free. A question I would have that I don't think will ever get answered is, what does this mean for Pochita? Is he just along for the ride now? Is he also helping? Is he trying to pilot different aspects of it? Or is he just there experiencing it with Denji himself? For me, what makes his transformation very impactful is how it's possible. I think you would naturally come to the conclusion that throughout the story, a form like this should have already happened. The loss of Reze, the Makima situation, the Power and Aki situation, Naruto for example, there's so many times where he loses people that are very close to him, and that spirals him into full armor Pochita. We've seen how crafty Denji can get, especially with the Makima fight and him creating a clone of himself, a literal body double while he's away from the combat, which is really cool. This is something else entirely. This seems more like acceptance, more like a mental and emotional dive into Denji's acknowledgement of his trauma and how that corresponds to the form that is full armor Pochita. I have a belief that the conversation that he's had with Asa has reflected on him very positively. And because of that conversation and the connection that he's made with Asa being equals, this form is actually possible, which I think in total can be very ironic. The reason that war might get obliterated this time round by a Denji that is in control is because Asa was the one to connect with Denji. I don't think I've ever taken this fight to be who does the most power wins. I've seen very few comments, little ones, about how this power escalation is a little out of control. Yoru should win or Pochita should win. How do they continue to escalate this power without no real winner? Well, it's because death is out of the story. So technically, no one can win. The only way Yoru can capture a victory is by convincing herself that she has won by subduing Denji for a moment. This is where she gets caught out with Denji throwing up his peace sign, which beats paper. Mind you, she's not playing the game, but she already perceived the notion that she lost, which makes her think that she can't transform Denji. A very cute and extra way to think about this is that peace beats war, and very fitting for this type of whimsical situation. I have never technically seen this fight as being a raise in power escalation to the point of whoever does more damage is going to win. I have seen it as more of like whoever outsmarts and outmaneuvers the other person will technically win. A really easy example that I can give you is that Pochita has versed war before. He's also versed all of the horsemen and an army of devils and primal fears. Pochita is the most broken, busted character in this story. There is a 99% chance that he will never lose because he just keeps coming back. And with a power like Erasure, how can you actually ever defeat him? So he's versed all of these people before, and while we haven't seen it and supposedly technically lost and escaped into the human world, which is the beginning of Chainsaw Man, you don't really know how long he fought for, how hard he technically fought, or if he even tried. And that is one of the more consistent things, is that Pochita doesn't really try. He gets by, he does his own thing, but this is a being that is world and dimension ending. I feel like I can comfortably say that there isn't a situation where we've seen Pochita actually try, because he always adheres to the feelings and the ideas and dreams that Denji has always had. World needs to be functioning for that to take place. But also, Pochita is not this mass murdering being. So if you're trying to scale that with power, logically, Pochita would win very rapidly and it'd be a pretty boring fight. Thus, we get into the technicality. How do we continue to roll this fight and get the semantics in? How do we make Pochita and Denji win against someone as conniving as war? Brings up the idea we've talked about before. Death currently doesn't exist. We don't really know what version of death is there, or if people are just suffering in despair because that's what war thinks is happening, which means perhaps it's possible that Denji Man right now can cut and split Yoru in half, taking Asa away from Yoru. 1, without killing them both, and 2, separating them enough so they can't actually merge back together. Now I don't know what this would technically mean for Yoru. She perhaps could just body swap into someone else, or even turn into a big amalgamation of all these bodies combined that represents war, which would be pretty crazy. But the goal right now is obviously saving Asa, and I think we're in a prime position, as death is out the window, to actually have that be possible. I'm curious with this intended focus that Denji Man is going to have, how it actually changes fighting wise. He has all of the strong capabilities of Pochita, but now that he's focused, do we get anything else? Now we have a design and a purpose that Denji can go for, but will there be new abilities or something else that comes out that changes this whole fight on its head? I think there's a ton of great ways that this can go. One thing, however, I will always keep in the back of my mind is that for how good something seems, this is Tatsuki Fujimoto. And at any point, from any direction, he can tear it all apart and truly hurt us to our core. So while things may seem like it's on the up and up for all of the characters that we come to love, but there's always a chance, because this is Fujimoto, and you can never be comfortable around what he does with his characters or how he even ends his stories.